In our last part of the compliance series, let us look at how to integrate already mapped process modules and what it does to the mapping to a reference model. So here we have a new workspace, and in the modules, I'm going to add change management, configuration management, and project management into one workspace. Take the valid version of each, and each of these modules has already been mapped, in this example to Automotive SPICE, different scopes. So by adding them into one workspace, we can look at the joint process of all modules and also at the compliance scopes which have been added. So all three scopes are now part of this integrated workspace, and I don't need to repeat any of the mapping because it's already been integrated as well. So looking at a particular process part, such as the project management, and looking at a particular part of that which has been mapped to Automotive SPICE, I see the mapping has been retained. Now, another important part are how to report on this result, and some out-of-the-box reports under the report section and the compliance folder are the process perspective of compliance traces and the model perspective of compliance traces. Let's start with the process perspective. So in order to find out if this process has been mapped to anything in the Automotive SPICE with all these scopes included in this particular workspace, I can add one scope, or holding down Shift, I can select all scopes. Holding down Control, I could select or deselect single scopes. And I can also choose whether to include empty mappings, meaning any process parts or any reference models parts which have not been mapped to process parts yet. And running the report by either pressing here or on the Run button will give me a result that shows me and linked the reference model parts and the process parts which have been mapped, as well as a rating and a possible comment. What can I do with this result? First of all, using the three-button menu, this result can be exported in any of the viable formats, such as an Excel file. Clicking on it, it will be generated. I could open it directly. And it also will include the direct links to these process parts. You can also use it, for instance, with the empty mappings to create a report, an Excel file that shows you which parts of that particular process have not yet been successfully mapped, or rather which parts of the scopes that you look at still need more mapping. So it's also a good way to generate an evidence list for any assessment or audit coming up. The main point, as we'll see later, is that you can also have more than one reference model reported on at once. Now, if we go into the reference model by clicking one of the links, what we will see is that here in this particular model, we don't see the backlink because we don't have the context. We don't necessarily know which of the many models or workspaces which have been mapped against this project would be viable to show here. And this is why there is another report, the compliance section, which is the reference model perspective report. So here we have the other way around. So if we wanted to see what all has been mapped, let's say, to project management, we could pick, this is a different one as we copy, and we can pick the integrated that we have and run that report. And we see that the SPICE, the Automotive SPICE reference model, maps to both the project management in the integrated workspace and to another workspace called software copy. So here we can again link out to the actual integrated process workspace, and we will see the mapping to Automotive SPICE on that single element here as well. Now, of course, it seems tedious and cumbersome to have so many mappings done, but as I've shown, you only need to do them module by module, and once you integrate up the module, that information is pertained. It's also pertained across versions of these reference models. So if I have Automotive SPICE 3.2 or 3.3, if it's ever published, then importing that will retain the mapping I've already done to 3.1 and allow this to be transferred. Now, there's different offerings by method park, and one of the offerings we have is a functional safety process framework, and one of the salient features of which is that all the processes described in this framework have been mapped to both Automotive SPICE 3.1 and the ISO 26262. So you can rest assured that they're rather complete mapping, which you can use to build your own process on and already start with a very sound mapping. So this can be shown by looking at the reports. And if you run the compliance reports, for instance, for this process perspective on the functional safety process framework, let's say we pick the we pick the entire Automotive SPICE scope as well as the ISO 262 scope and run this. You see we end up with a report on the entirety of ISO 262 and also further down on Automotive SPICE, which means that we have a complete framework mapped to these both relevant, very relevant reference models, which can be used to save you a lot of work in that respect.